Hello everyone, it's Dr. Manjari Nadkarni, Ayurvedic MD, registered holistic nutritionist, back today with day 56 of 100 days of Ayurveda. Thank you for everyone who is showing up live. I can see Uttam ji here. Thank you for showing up live. For any of you who are live here, please you can post a comment and let me know that you're live. If you are seeing this as a replay, please feel free to post a hashtag as replay. And oops, I haven't really cleaned my office today, I guess. So yeah, so feel free to post a hashtag as replay or feel free to let me know if you're live. Today has been kind of a really heavy day with the Blackout Tuesday. There's a lot going on in the world. I'm still processing what's going on. The only thing I would like to say before I commence my Facebook Live on the topic of dairy is that any act of violence, whether in the form of thoughts or speech or action, contributes to violence, right? So in the Vedic culture, when we talk about ahimsa or we talk about any action, actions are carried out at three different levels. First they start in your thoughts, then in your speech, and then the actual act. So seeing the current situation, it is a time for each and every person to really take a look at their own lives and really be compassionate, right? So really try to feel what others are going through rather than judging them, right? Because this is how everything starts. This is how racism starts. This is how casteism starts. Not having consideration for others. And in some ways, like, I don't want to go off the tangent, but that's all I'm trying to say today is just be compassionate and just be extremely aware of everything you think about, everything you say, and everything you do. So you don't have to regret it or somebody else doesn't have to feel bad about it, right? So that's my only request to everyone. And I'll get started with the topic of inside scoop of dairy. I just thought it wouldn't be fair for me to say nothing and just, get on as if nothing has happened. But, lives are lost and this is the reality. So if we all take some accountability on some level for what's happening, if we all try to educate ourselves, or even be aware, that itself will contribute to the betterment of the society in general, right? Hi Ramachandra ji, thanks for being here. Hi Usha ji, nice to see you. So I can see a few more people. So if you're live here, we have a super interesting topic. I've been asked about this for a long time. We're going to talk about dairy. We're going to talk about cow milk mainly today when it comes to dairy. And we will be discussing some Ayurvedic things that, what Ayurveda says about milk. And we'll also be discussing a few reasons why, in North America, we can see a lot of skin conditions that can be attributed to excessive milk use. We're going to talk about whey, we can talk about casein and lactose and how different they are. And I'm just going to try to, educate you about dairy, cow dairy, what's going on, is it good, is it bad, and try to answer those questions for you. So when we talk about milk in Ayurveda, Ayurveda has a very special place for milk, right? So Ayurveda considers milk to be something known as jivaniya, something that's life promoting, and it's also a rasayana, so which is also meant as a rejuvenative or something that can go through all your channels of the body and really nourish all your tissues. It is also something that's seen as supporting your shukra dhatu or all your reproductive tissues. It's seen to nourish all your tissues, for it to go for shukra, it has to nourish all your tissues. And it also promotes your ojas or vitality, right? So if you see any of the textual references of milk, it's thought to be like, it's revered to be like the best thing ever, right? So it's extremely useful for people who are tired, or who are emaciated or who don't have a lot of physical strength. It's promoting to your intelligence, it's really promoting to your strength. For women who are breastfeeding, it can actually contribute to the increase in your breast milk. For people that are tired, for people that are dizzy, it's really good for them. So a lot of conditions, like, if you have had chronic fever, and if you are extremely, you lost a lot of weight because of chronic condition or a chronic fever, chronic inflammation, it can actually strengthen you. If you have any kind of bleeding disorders, it can help with that. It's sweet in taste. It's very soft. It's a little oily. It's kind of very harmonizing to your body. It's a little bit slimy, or pitchil is what we can call it. It's a bit heavy to digest, right? And it's also very calming to your being. So these are some qualities of cow milk. And cow milk can also, it promotes ojas, as I mentioned, which is also your life force or your vitality. But it's also really important for your brain function, for your intelligence. It's good for your immunity. It's good for your vitality. It's has a mild laxative action for some people. It balances vata dosh and pitta dosh, and it can promote kapha dosh, right? It has kapha like qualities. And for people who have excess kapha in the body, milk is not recommended, right? If you have what we call navajvar, or new inflammation, new onset of inflammation, then we ask you, or new fevers, if the fever has just started, if you're just getting inflamed, we do not recommend milk, right? If you have a weak digestive fire, we do not recommend milk. If you have ama of or digestive toxins in your body, we do not recommend milk, right? So there's a condition called kushta, or skin condition. So in skin conditions, milk is not recommended. And usually when you have a lot of kapha dosh in your body, excess kapha, if you have diarrhea, or if you have a lot of cough or lots of phlegm, at that time milk is not recommended, right? So I'm talking about the references of where you should be drinking milk, or where you can have milk, and where you shouldn't have milk, right? And these are all the references from the Ayurvedic text. So the one that I was quoting is from Yoga Ratnakar, right? And a little bit from Ashtanga Sangraha as well. So these are the texts. So anybody who's an Ayurvedic knows which texts I'm talking about. So again, the question is, should you have milk, or should you not drink milk? Hi, Swati, nice to see you. So if you have any of those conditions where milk is indicated, if you're extremely tired, if you're losing a lot of muscle mass, if you're losing a lot of weight, then you can start drinking milk. But if you have a kapha excess in your body, if you have a weak digestive fire, right? If you have any kind of phlegm in your body, if you have the amadosh, conditions where you have lots of inflammatory products circulating in your body, if ama is a substance form that is neither digested nor assimilated nor excreted, and that can take hold of your joints, make you extremely lethargic, makes you extremely tired. So if you have any ama related conditions, then you shouldn't be having milk. One simple way to see the status of your agni or your digestion is check your tongue every single morning after you scrape your tongue, right? So when you wake up, you brush your teeth, and then you take a tongue scraper, or you take the back of the spoon and scrape your tongue. And when you scrape your tongue, if you see a whitish coating on your tongue, which doesn't go even after scraping, you haven't digested the previous night's milk. You could have ama as well. So do not drink milk at that time. Right, so these are some simple things, textual references where I'm talking about the qualities of milk and whether you should have it or not, right? So milk is also, like really nourishing, and that's why it's kind of the first food that animals have, like all mammals have. Cow milk is something that can work as an aphrodisiac. It can increase the quantity of semen. It will delay aging. It increases your lifespan. It helps join broken bones and rejuvenates your body. So these are all amazing qualities of milk that have been described. If you have dysuria, difficulty passing urine, it works really well as well, right? If you have excess hunger, uncontrollable hunger, if you have excess thirst, in those conditions, milk will help you. um, So now who should not drink milk? So as I mentioned before, the kapha imbalance is something we talked about. We talked about a low digestive fire. We talked about excess kapha conditions like, even obesity or inflammation like ama, right? People shouldn't drink milk. So let's go back a step and let's talk about Canada, right? So when we talk about kapha dosh, different kind of lands, can also have different dominance of doshas, right? So when we look at a desert, for example, which is really dry and there's a lot of wind, that is going to be characterized by increased vata, right? So any person living in the desert, if the heat is too much, then the pitta will increase as well. But if the wind is constantly blowing, that will show up in the body of the persons who are living there as an excess of vata, right? So when you talk about Canada, we are surrounded by large bodies of water. We are surrounded by forests, we are in cold all the time. Sometimes the lack of sun, for 6 months, you don't have proper sunlight. It's extremely cold. So the country itself, the climate itself is conducive to the growth of kapha in the body, right? And at the time when you have excess kapha in the body and then you're drinking milk, it's not going to work for you. And that is one main reason that I've seen a lot of kids, I've seen a lot of people in Canada react to milk much more than people in India, right? And then there are going to be some reasons that I'll discuss as well. But this is one of the main reasons that, when you look at India, the climate is completely different, right? It's hot and humid. So you actually can digest the milk, the heat is something because milk is cooling to your body, right? So it actually works for you when it's a hot climate or it's not as heaviness, there's no natural heaviness in the environment. But here when you're living in a kapha land, when your bodies are full of kapha, are full of ama, right, that is the reason why milk might not work for you. So that is one thing, right? And I'm not saying this for everybody across, but this is extremely common. Now when I talk about kids, I see a lot of kids for allergy testing. I test for food sensitivities, and I use something called muscle testing for a food sensitivity testing. So I test a lot of kids, kids with behavioral issues, kids having skin conditions. Eczema is extremely common in Canada, right? So kids having like diaper rashes, which could end up being eczema, kids with eczema or any other conditions, kids with focus issues or, lack of concentration, behavioral issues, there are lots of issues that you can see in kids, and they could be reacting to milk. So also remember that when you're a child, right, the childhood phase that we talk about is also a phase where kapha is naturally dominant. Kapha is the dominant dosha of the phase because it's helping your body grow, right? And when you look at milk could also have the bovine growth hormone or some kind of growth hormones, right? So especially when milk is not organic and it's been pumped with hormones, it is going to create a lot of kapha imbalance in your kids as well. So that's something to remember. So childhood is a kapha phase, we're living in a kapha land, and that is one of the reasons why milk does not work for a lot of people in Canada. Now, if you have a vata dominant dosha type or a vata dominant body or a pitta dominant body, milk might work for you. So I'm not saying this for each and every person, but I'm just trying to say that, just be a little bit careful when it comes to milk, because as you are advertised, that milk is the best thing, it might not be true for the current situation in Canada at this time, right? So this is something to always understand. This is always something to remember. So if you have kids, who are eating solid food, for example, right? So for a child who's solely dependent on milk, right? So if they are only having like breast milk and after that bottled milk, it is fine to feed them milk, right? But if your child has started eating fruits and vegetables and has eczema or has some other health conditions, always get your child tested. And if they are feeling like not drinking milk at all, if they hate milk or if they show some kind of aversion, don't force feed them. They might actually be reacting to it. right? So these are a few things I wanted to say when we talk about milk as a substance, right? So if it works for you, it will be fantastic because it is almost thought as a complete food, right? So it has good amounts of proteins, amino acids, it has, you know, good fats, it has, carbs in the form of sugar, so it has everything that can serve as a complete food. But if you are reacting to it, it might not work for you. And as Ayurveda says, one food, you have to customize it according to your requirements, your health condition, not just your dosha type, but also your health condition, right? So whether you're having, any existing condition, or if you have diabetes, or if you have joint pain, you have to consider those factors as well, and not just the dosha type. And that's also the one thing, because everybody that I talk to, they are like, okay, this is my prakriti, I'm kapha dominant or a pitta dominant or vata dominant, should I do this, should I do that? You don't just consider the prakriti, you also consider the vikruti, you also consider the agni, you also consider the place you are actually located in, you also consider the current climate, right? Is it hot? Is it cold? You consider your age, life stage, right? So you consider a lot of different things, and not just the dosha type as is marketed by everybody. Any questions so far? So if you have any questions, you can always post it in the comment section. And if you are watching this as a replay as well, feel free to post it in any questions in the comment section. You can also tag me. And if you are liking this video, I would appreciate if you share it or tag your friends so they can also see you. So milk is not just used to drink in Ayurveda. It's also used along with a lot of herbs, or certain herbs are also cooked with milk, right? So in my Facebook group, I've added a recipe for garlic milk, which is useful in joint pain. So you can take like garlic cloves, you can crush them, you can add half water, half milk, and cook till the water evaporates, and then you have the milk, which is fortified, with the herb, and that helps with joint pain. Another herb which is extremely common is known as Arjuna, which is extremely important for heart, right? So if you have cardiomegaly, not angina, but if you have, if any structural issues where the muscles of your heart are getting weaker, a herb like Arjuna would work amazing, right? And you can cook it with milk, and that works fantastic. Even chawanprash, so for people that are eating chawanprash, what we recommend is, you eat a spoon of chawanprash and you drink some warm milk, and that has more of a rasayan effect on you, right? We also have a lot of oils for body massage that are cooked with milk. An example would be kshir bala tel, where sida cordifolia is bala and kshir is milk, so they've been cooked together, and that helps, strengthen your joints. So we're going to talk about that. So I'm going to take a few questions. I can see the proteins in milk, and yeah, I'm going to talk about those as well. I'll first answer Uttamji's questions. So whole milk is, whole milk in which, you're not taking the fat out. So typically for 1%, 2%, 3.5% milk, what they do is they'll take the fat out and then they'll distribute it according to the percentage, right? It is not healthy. In my opinion, it is absolutely not healthy, because you're creating something that is unnatural, right? And fat free diets have failed, right? If you're having bad fat, like if you're having trans fat like french fries or chips, that itself is a bad thing. But when you're looking at the natural fat found in milk, it has to be in a way that nature has given it. When you try processing it, it becomes extremely difficult for your body to digest. So always buy whole milk and always buy organic milk, right? So if you're somebody who's a vegetarian and who needs that protein from the milk, or if you're somebody who doesn't want to give up the milk, or if you're somebody who's tired or doing like a lot of physical activities and you need that milk, or if you're aging and you need that milk for rasayana, always go for whole milk, always go for organic milk, right? So when you talk about organic milk, you are also making sure that the cows aren't pumped with hormones, right? So when you pump a lot of cows with hormones, the hormones end up being in the milk. So whether it's the bovine growth hormone, and milk could also have a lot of estrogens, right? And estrogens or other growth factors found in the milk will not help in conditions related to excessive growth. So when we talk about cancer therapies, if you have an active tumor which is growing, ideally avoiding milk would work. And again, there is a whole debate, these are my opinions, somebody else could have some other opinions, 100%, right? So again, a disclaimer, this is my opinion based on my experience in the clinic as well as my education, right? So when I interviewed one of uh, a really good doctor who was also on the board of physicians, and he's an MD medicine in the US, he talked about estrogens being present in all the milk, and he could attribute all health conditions to dairy, and he absolutely advised people to go off milk and only have plant-based foods, right? So that was his opinion. But if you use good quality milk, ideally if you buy like even pasteurized milk, they heat it to a certain temperature, and the bacteria and all die, but they're still in the milk and they're not properly killed. So that's the other issue. Raw milk is illegal in Canada unless you have your own dairy farm and you own your own cows. But for sale, milk which is non-pasteurized or unpasteurized is not available in Canada. So you will buy pasteurized milk, but the one thing to always remember is even if you buy whole milk, always boil it before you drink it, right? So what the Agni Sanskar, when you expose it to the fire, when you boil it, when you raise the temperature, it makes it digestible. So in Ayurveda, we believe that whenever you're exposing things to Agni, right, Agni kind of processes, digests it a little bit, so it becomes much more digestible. And if you're having milk, especially in Canada, try to add some spices that will aid digestion. An example would be turmeric, right? So turmeric, the queen of spices, or the yellow gold, you can always add that in your milk. And that will definitely make the milk less phlegmy, because turmeric also cuts through the phlegm, right? Cinnamon is another option. If you don't like the flavor of cinnamon, cardamom or green cardamom pods, right? You can just put one pod when you're boiling the milk. It'll make the milk extremely fragrant. And when you boil it with the milk, right, it also helps the digestion of milk, right? You can also open up the pod, you can crush those green seeds and add it in milk. So again, I'm recapping a little bit. We talked about the indications and the contraindications, who should drink milk, who should not drink milk. When we talk about milk, always buy milk as whole milk, always buy it organic, right? And always boil it before you drink it. Do not drink milk out of the fridge, because milk is cooling. Milk by nature is kapha increasing, right? Putting it in the fridge becomes more cold. Anything cold is going to further increase your kapha, right? When it's heavy, when it's cold, it's not boiled, it's going to be harder on your digestion. And unfortunately, in today's world, most of us have an impaired Agni or a sluggish digestion. So this is something to keep in mind. Always buy whole milk, always boil it, and always buy organic. Now, the fourth thing to do, if you can get it, is buy grass-fed milk, right? So grass-fed milk is much more important. If you can find grass-fed milk, because grass, like pasture-fed cows, that's the natural diet of cows, right? Sometimes in the winter months, if grass is not available, they might be grain-fed. When they are fed with organic foods, they're not added any GMOs, and there's going to be less inflammation, right? So that's also something to consider. And if you know any farmers, buying milk from a farmer that that takes good care of their cows is also important. Um, uh, because See, an idea when we look at the factory farming conditions today is, cows are placed in tiny spaces where they absolutely cannot move their body, and they're fed day and night. And I'm talking about the most common, like the farming practices that are, in big corporations or in big farms, right? So what ends up happening is there's a tiny hole where, or a tiny space that the cow is sitting, and she's been fed food and she cannot move a lot, right? And then she's also injected with a lot of hormones. So think about yourself in those circumstances. If you're made to stand in a tiny place, and if you're fed day and night, and if you cannot move, that will create a lot of inflammation in your body, and that's also excreted, right? So for the cow, that's excreted through milk. So the milk that you're getting is inflammatory in nature, right? So this is something to understand. So if there are a lot of small dairy farms in Canada. If you can connect with them, that would be fantastic. But if you have to buy it from the grocery store, organic is the best option, and whole milk would be the best option. So that's something to consider. Now, Ankita has another good question that, there are different proteins in the cow. So when we talk about different proteins found in the milk, not just the cow, so when we talk about different proteins in the milk, the main ones are whey and casein, right? So whey is the part of the milk. So when you curdle milk, if you put some lime juice in the milk and the milk starts curdling, the liquid that remains is whey, which has a lot of amino acids, right? That's the protein part. And then you also have the casein, which is the other part, right? So whey protein is easily digestible. Whey protein can be digested in your body in something like 45 minutes, right? So it can be digested pretty fast. But if you look at the other component known as casein, right? So casein takes up to 3 hours to digest. So whey protein is also available as protein shakes, right? The one thing you again have to be aware is whether you're reacting to proteins. Are you allergic to whey, or are you allergic to casein? Are you intolerant to whey, or you could be intolerant or sensitive, whatever you call, but you could react. Your body could actually trigger a reaction to whey or casein. That's also something to keep in mind. So these are the two milk proteins. Whey is the protein that gets digested in 45 minutes, and then casein is the protein that gets digested in about like 3 hours or so, right? So these are two different kinds of proteins. Now, when it comes to the A1 versus the A2, the beta casein structure is different, is what a lot of studies have been done. There's a huge controversy and huge debate. So New Zealand cows typically have been marketed to have more of the A2 beta casein, right? So the A2 is the casein found in milk, which is easily digestible. And the A1 is found in typically all other cows, which is not as digestible, right? And that's why a lot of the times, A2 cows are marketed to be at like better for your health. And then sometimes the pricing of the A2 cows is also much higher, right? So the status depends on the alleles for the beta casein gene. So I'm not going to get into like the whole homozygous, heterozygous A1, A2 or A2, A2. But there are cattle who produce A1 milk. There are certain cattle who produce A2 milk. And there are some cattle which produce both A1 and A2. So when we look at the best milk, especially in India, right, a lot of the cows in India, like red Sindhi and Gir, are cows with the hump specifically, like they also provide with a lot of A2 milk, right, which is said to be the best one versus the A1, which is commonly found in the West, right? So New Zealand is again one of the Western countries, but they market having A2 milk. So some studies will refute that, okay, A1, A2 doesn't really matter, but some studies have definitely shown that A2 is the better option, right? So in India, when we talk about the Gir cows that are found to be the most fantastic of the cows, and the milk is supposed to be like really good, right? Or Gir ghee, which is famous. So Gir is a place in Gujarat, So the milk is capable of treating broken bones. It's used for insomnia, used for joint massage and lots of different things. So these cows actually have a hump on their back, which is known as Surya Ketu Nadi, right? So that's the name of the nadi. And what they say is that this kind of vein or this kind of nadi, right? Or nerve, like I'm not quite sure what exactly it is, but it absorbs energy from the sun rays and moon rays and else, and that's also transferred in the milk, and the milk ends up being extremely nutritious. So that's also one of the big beliefs, right? So when we talk about A2K milk, A2 is definitely, like scientifically, they have done a lot of studies where they've proven it's better, but then you'll find more literature which says it doesn't matter. But according to my experience, when you look at Canada, definitely the milk allergies are much more, right? So it could be contributed by the kapha land, it could be contributed by also the kapha nature of people, right? Because the land is also going to influence you a lot. So if you see somebody who's stockily built and sturdily built and has kapha excess or has a lot of ama, they are going to react to milk, whether it's A1, whether it's A2, it might be both, right? Because the nature of milk is to increase kapha. So turmeric powder swallowed along with, yes. So Uttamji, when you add the turmeric powder, you will drink it with the milk, right? So you can make turmeric milk. Turmeric lattes are pretty popular in today's world, but you can make the turmeric milk. You can drink the powder as well. You can take a pinch of powder. You don't have to add a lot of it, like maybe even a quarter teaspoon or 1/8 of a teaspoon is fine. But turmeric, even adding a little bit of black pepper, just a tiny pinch in the milk, can help make the milk extremely digestible. So these are some simple things and some simple thoughts on milk, and these are some simple ideas where we are discussing milk. So I did mention the grass fed, organic ones. Yeah, so I'm just gonna go over my notes. So again, uh, E1A2 milk as anti-aging. Okay. So a lot of people have a habit of drinking milk before bedtime, right? So if you have insomnia, if you are underweight, if you're extremely fatigued, if you don't have cold or you're not obese, that time it works for you. So for people with sleep issues, with insomnia, who cannot sleep well, who could also be feel like not feel grounded, having some warm boiled milk, you can let it cool a little bit to make it warm. Having milk can help. If you add a pinch of nutmeg is extremely grounding. Or you could also take ashwagandha, which helps assist balancing your adrenals and helps also with sleep, and also helps strengthen your body, right? So that's one thing you could do. So Ankita is asking me, would you say a reason could also be the absence of diverse and healthy gut flora? So definitely. So if you are having milk from a regular cow who's injected with hormones or antibiotics, because you don't want the cows falling sick, right? So when we talk about factory farming and the evils that it has, and it's a huge industry, it's heavily marketed, right? So if you are injecting hormones like antibiotics to your cattle, whether it's the milk or the flesh, when you're consuming it, you're also getting that, and that will also impact your gut flora, right? So when you're having tiny doses of an animal, whether it's the flesh, whether it's the milk, right, that has been injected with hormones, that has been injected in with antibiotics, it is going to enter you, right? So that's something to keep in mind. So that could also create a lot of issues with the gut flora. The absence of diverse and healthy gut flora, there are lots of reasons to it, right? So the milk is one issue. The other issue that I see for everyone generally, right? The first gut flora that we get in our life is through the vaginal tract of your mother, right? So when you have, like, when you come out in this world, when you're delivered to the world, the first exposure to the bacteria of, or how your gut flora develops, is depends on the vaginal flora of your mom, right? And that is So when we look at a lot of C-section babies who are not exposed to that, form of normal delivery, so they don't have that gut flora, they don't have as good gut flora, and these are also studies that have been done. And also in today's world, like in India in the olden days, there would be a whole protocol. If you look at Ayurveda as well, there's a whole protocol. There are different supplements and different herbs that a woman takes for all the 9 or 10 months, right? So 10 of the lunar months, we talk about 9 of the solar months, but the entire process of delivery, every month there's a different herbal combination given that actually supports and nourishes her body. And when her body is really nourished, also your gut flora is going to be extremely good, right? When your body is fortified, you are going to have a good immunity, and no bacteria or yeasts are going to easily take over your body. But if you don't have a good gut flora, it's going to reflect on your immunity, it's going to reflect on other things. And also when you don't have good amounts of nourishment in the body, when your immune system is low, you're not going to have a good gut flora either. So there are several factors that we can talk about, but that is also one of the reasons, whether we talk about C-sections, whether we attribute a lot of stress today, whether we attribute not following those, seasonal regimens, dietary protocols for pregnancy and postpartum. There are lots of reasons we talk about. Gut flora, we could talk for hours on that. Milk and diabetes, right? So when we talk about milk and diabetes, so diabetes, again, in Ayurveda, we talk about prameha, which is characterized by a lot of prabhut mehati. So lots of urination is one of the factors, right? So when you talk about blood sugar imbalances, and in my experience, because it's also a kaphagenic food, and a lot of the type 2 diabetes that I see, a lot of metabolic issues that I see can actually be worsened by milk, especially if it's inflamed, right? Because there's already a lot of pathology going on in your body. So when we talk about, diabetes, we also look at, there's a lot of oxidative reactions happening in the body, right? There's a lot of free radical damage as well. And diabetes is also one condition that slowly weakens your immune system and everything else. So typically, if you are in the obese category with metabolic syndrome and diabetes, then ideally avoiding would be the best option for you. If you are somebody who is in, because again, we would categorize that into vata, pitta, kapha, right? So if you are like really emaciated and if you have no strength, right? At that time, you can use milk, but always with herbs, right? But ideally, if you are in the obese category, which is commonly seen today, right? And also that when we talk about prameha, it's also a disease of nourishment, right? We used to call it like obesity as well. These are diseases where you're overnourished, where you're eating too much sugar, where you're eating too much, fatty foods, and there's a lot of kapha, and the blockages are making your insulin, insensitive to the insulin. At that time, avoiding milk is the best way to go, right? So avoiding anything that's going to increase the growth or slow down your agni further or be a little bit challenging to digest or kaphagenic in nature, ideally avoiding that would be a good option, right? So I hope this helps you find some answers for milk. One of the easiest animal substitutions for milk, right? I don't think I have much time to go on about yogurt and ghee, and I will probably address it in one of the lives this week. But if you are somebody who does not want to stop drinking milk, but is allergic to cow milk, right? One of the other options for you is to buy goat milk. So the goat milk protein structure is smaller than cow milk, and goat being like a tinier animal than cows, who's always grazing on grass and who's like super active, right? The milk is going to be lighter in qualities. The milk is not going to be as heavy in qualities, right? So if you absolutely do not want to give up your milk and are like, what the hell is Manjari talking about? I can't give up my milk. But you're still having skin conditions, you're still having rashes, or you're still having that fatigue or inflammation, or are struggling with your weight, goat milk is a better option. Again, when we talk about goat versus sheep, right? Sheep is like fattier animal, right? When we talk about lamb or sheep, typically, sheep is typically like a fattier animal. So goat milk would be the better option. And an interesting fact is, also we've used camel milk therapeutically. So in Ayurveda, we talk about different kinds of milk and talk about different mammals and qualities of milk. And um, camel milk actually has a lot of like alkalinity in it. It also has some salts, is what we say, lavan. It's like salty tasting, and we use it for ascites, or where your belly is filled with a lot of water. In the peritoneal cavities, if there's a lot of water, we used to use it therapeutically. So just an interesting fact I thought I'd mention. So any more questions for today on milk, goat's milk? I'm not going into detail in goat's milk, but this is my take on cow milk. Yeah, but then there are also some farms. So I know like there are some local farms, who are also taking care of the goats, and they have like organic goat's cheese and all that. So definitely goats as well, if you're looking for goats that are typically meant for slaughtering, they are pumped with hormones and injectables, and that's really true as well, So any kind of animals which are farmed could totally be pumped with hormones and injectables. And if you look at goats, especially because during different festivals, where goat meat is much in demand, they try to pump all these goats so they grow up in size and really bulk up, and they appear more mature than they are, right? Even baby goats are like pumped. The same thing with chickens. If we look in the bird kingdom, like they're pumped with hormones. So always, try to buy organic. um, Always try to, like, I know the biggest question that I get, when I talk to most people about organic foods is, do you want to pay with your health, or do you want to pay through your pocket, right? Because there's always like you end up paying with something, right? So either you pay with your health, either you can kind of grow your own things and try to kind of not pay a lot of money. But some things, especially like milk, I would buy that organic. When you buy milk, you can buy that organic. When you buy meat, try to buy organic. I don't eat meat, but usually when I do my groceries, for my husband, I'll buy organic chicken. I try not to buy anything that's pumped or injected with hormones. So that's a little discussion on the inside scoop of dairy. Tomorrow, I'm going to talk about nut milks and different options of vegan milks, right? So, tomorrow, I'm going to talk about plant based milk. So, we'll be discussing oats milk, we'll be discussing coconut milk, we'll be discussing almond milk, cashew milk, hemp milk. So, different kinds of milk that come from plants rather than animals. And I'll try to talk about the pros and cons of those. Like, are they nutritious? Are they not nutritious? So that's what I'm going to talk about in tomorrow's live. And the day after, I was planning to do a whole foods one, but I might actually continue this session and move on to ghee and yogurt, right? So that's something I would love to talk about, because yogurt, like, everybody loves eating yogurt in Canada, but it's not as healthy as you think it is, right? For probiotics, sometimes you're better off taking probiotics. So I'll be discussing that what are alternatives to yogurt in the next live, probably like Thursday. Yeah. So that's what we can do. Again, so for everybody watching, thank you for watching this live. Thank you, Ankita, for the great encouragement. I hope you like always see my live videos, and I'm happy that I can contribute some information and help you make some wiser choices. I would love to invite you all for my free webinar. If you haven't signed up for my free webinar, I'm going to discuss Eat Right for Your Body Type. And that's a webinar where I'm going to be discussing a little bit about body type. And if you are somebody who's struggling with your diet, if you're struggling with emotional eating, if you have a lot of anxiety around food, this is the webinar you should be attending. And I'm going to try and bring a lot of things to light and talk about a few things, that the health industry is not being honest about, or the food industry is not being honest about. So I'm going to do a lot of discussions in that 1 hour live webinar. It is a live webinar, so you can ask me any questions that you want. So please register. I've posted the link in the comment section. So please, register if you haven't already registered. Thank you, Tamji. Thank you, Ushaji. Thanks, Chitra Kaku. So thank you everyone for watching this live. I will see you tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to talk about plant-based milks or vegan milk. So that's what we're going to discuss. So if you have any questions, just be ready with your questions, and I would love for I would love to answer those, and hopefully this is helpful. So thanks and have a fantastic night, and stay calm, stay quiet, stay compassionate. There's a lot happening around us, and definitely it does affect every person, right? So always, stay aware of what's happening, always, have that sense of awareness. Again, I started my whole topic with this thing that, always be aware of your thoughts, your deeds, right? And also your words, right? So any kind of action, when we talk about the Vedic life, when we talk about Sanatan Dharma, it's not just about violence in terms of, killing someone. It's also in the form of thoughts or speech or actions. So please have that high level of awareness as not to harm any other living being or even animal for that matter, or even a plant, right? So yeah, try to just be good, be compassionate. And thank you, Ramchandraji, as well. Thanks, everyone. And I'll be back tomorrow. So let's meet up tomorrow. Same time, plant-based milks is the topic. Have a good night. Bye for now.